Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Miss Texas Show. As always, super excited and looking forward to having you and everyone here today. But this is Melissa Santana, your co-host, who is always super excited, like I said, to have everyone. And so we also have a wonderful guest today. But before we introduce our guest, we want to officially welcome you all to the show. And so with that, welcome everyone to the Miss Texas Show, where we showcase life in Texas and beyond and highlight amazing survivors of traumatic events, family violence, sex trafficking, sexual abuse, and community leaders who share community resources. Under our segment Military Time, we invite military and veterans who would like to share with us their experiences both during and after their military service. We run this segment in partnership with the Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We would also like to invite those who have overcome traumatic events and would like to share and are now ready to help others. Under our Beauty for Ashes segment, we invite fellow pageant sisters, winners, nominees, artists, musicians, actors, models, and dancers, as well as survivors who are now ambassadors for the cause, to share with our audience their lives and the impact that they have made. Our show runs twice a month, so if you would like to become a guest on our show, please email us at msusatexas@gmail.com, which is MSUSATEXAS@gmail, or you can message us on our Facebook, which is also at Ms. USA Texas. You can also make a donation at www.hopepyxglobal.org to help us help more people. And so with that, we have with us today James Russell. Super excited to have you with us. And so a little bit about James. 2 weeks after taking the photograph that would win him the prestigious Canadian Press Photographer of the Year award in 1992, he actually left photojournalism. With 5 completed screenplays in hand, he set out for Los Angeles, where he attended classes at UCLA's film school and network. The following year, he was chosen over dozens of applicants to study at the Canadian Film Center, where he wrote, produced, and directed his first short, The Red Car. Between 1992 and 1997, he worked as a film industry story consultant while finding the time to complete 9 feature-length screenplays, no small feat, 2 television dramas, and the screenplay for You've Got the Key, which is a series drama produced by Rhino Productions. In 1997, he wrote, produced, and directed The Painter, a hard-hitting social drama shot on location in Los Angeles. And in early 2001, he produced 4 30-minute films shot with 20 actors and a combined crew of 37. James, now a corporate communications consultant, has written and published 3 novels, the first of which is called Blue Father, Bloody Son, which was optioned for film and television in 2007 by NS Productions in Los Angeles, or from Los Angeles. His 4th novel, Mermaids and Zombies, is a story for young adults, was published in 2010. On James' feature film, Cut It Out, began shooting in February 2020, but wasn't interrupted by COVID, just like COVID has interrupted many things for most of us. James recently purchased the rights to Marianne Petrie's life story and wrote the script, Custody Denied, which is based on her story. And that's another guest that we've had on this show. By the time this airs, you will have hopefully seen Marianne's story as well, but again, that's what he has the script for, Custody Denied, which is based on her story. And then we also have Bridget Nielsen, Beverly Hills Cop Rocky, is currently reading the script for the lead role. So Bridget Nielsen, who is from Beverly Hills Cop and Rocky. So with that, we have somebody that's incredible. I'm sure has a lot of great things to share with us. So James, we're honored. It is certainly a pleasure to even have you. Thank you for taking the time. But also just, if you could just tell us a little bit about you. I mean, other than what we've learned, but just a little bit about you, your journey, what kind of like led you here today, that sort.
Well, thank you, Melissa and Eileen, for having me on the show. I'm a person who doesn't like talking about himself, so this is going to be painful, maybe perhaps even excruciating. So my background is photojournalism. Worked as a staff photographer for the Toronto Star, which is Canada's largest newspaper, for about 10 years. And then I started writing. Along the way, I've written screenplays and novels. I guess what I really want to talk about mostly is Custody Denied, which is a script that was inspired by Marianne Petrie's crusade to reform family court. about 7 years ago, my ex cut me off from my lovely grandchildren, who I haven't seen since. And that sort of got me on a journey to look at the family court system and family law. And along the way, I met Marianne, who basically for decades now has been counseling mothers and fathers on how to avoid the horrors of family court. And she's written a book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption. And she has a podcast called Slam the Gavel. So I was able to chat with Marianne, and we hit it off. So my company optioned her film and television rights. And for the last 2 years now, we've been trying to attract a name actress, someone like I don't know, like a Amy Adams, like a Bryce Dallas Howard, like a Famke Jensen, to the project so we can raise the money to get the film made. I say 2 years, that may sound like a lot to some people, but there are Hollywood projects that take 10 and 15 years to get onto the screen. It's a slow process oftentimes, especially for an indie producer like myself, and especially for a Canadian producer who doesn't have that kind of access to Hollywood. So what we're trying to do is attract a name actress, raise the money, and shoot it, likely someplace in the United States, possibly North Carolina, or possibly Texas. Once we get it made, then we're hoping that showing that the level of corruption in the family court system will initiate some kind of conversation that will bring about some level of reform. There's just hundreds and thousands, millions of mothers, fathers, children, and grandparents like myself who have been victimized by the family court system. It really is a horrible, horrible system. And it's $1 billion industry. Family court just generates funds for states and municipalities, not only through alimony payment, but there's this horrible thing called Title 4D, which actually provides an incentive to family court to bring about alimony payments on mothers and fathers. And the states profit from this. Interestingly enough, in the United States, after a judge has been appointed and his or her term is up, lawyers are allowed to vote for that judge's election campaign. So, the level of corruption and influence peddling is just pervasive in the family court system. So it really needs to change. And if you go to Google or Facebook and just punch in family court corruption or parental alienation, you'll find hundreds of websites and podcasts and Facebook pages that address that issue. So it's really time for there to be some change. And I'm hoping that by attracting a name actress, and it's a great role. It's a sort of, do you remember the movie Erin Brockovich?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great role for a woman in her sort of 40s and up. So we're hoping that to attract an actress to that role. It's not a big budget movie. We're looking about $2.6 million, which is about what Netflix spends on carbonated water and one of their movies. So it's not a big budget movie. No special effects, no superheroes other than Marianne. But we're hoping to get it made, and we're hoping to get it made soon.
Absolutely. And I just think, and thank you so very much for taking that on and for sharing that with us too. And I think it's just so great and timely that we were able to have Marianne, who's such a champion and does such incredible work. And it's just so amazing that she's going to be able to have this opportunity, to be able to do that and all of that. And she had actually felt that I think we didn't get a chance to mention those who were the producers and all of that, but obviously now we're redeeming ourselves by being able to talk more about the film and all of those things surrounding it. But we'll definitely also want to touch base with her too as it comes out, with all these things happening. But I actually love to hear that you don't follow the traditional route, with all the Hollywood productions and all of that. Like you kind of have this more, independent way that you go about producing films and all of that. So was all of that on purpose? Was there ever an opportunity to go the other route and produce Hollywood films and be able to do more of that arena, or did you always want to be able to have this kind of platform and be able to promote these kind of causes?
No, the Hollywood route is when I left the Toronto Star, and I went to Los Angeles because I had 5 screenplays completed. So I figured that once I stepped off that plane, Hollywood would snap me up. It took me about a week and a half to realize that every waiter, every person washing dishes, every person who works in a car wash facility, every cop, every lawyer has a screenplay in their back pocket. Los Angeles is just overflowing with scripts and screenwriters. So I spent about a year and a half there, and then I realized that I needed to come back home, back to Toronto. Breaking through to Hollywood is very difficult. We had tried to approach streamers like Netflix and Amazon. Well, we can't. It's the firewall is so thick that you can't get through it. That's why we just decided to go our own way. As a Canadian, I'm eligible for 35% of my production budget. So we already have guaranteed 35%, which is about 800,000, 900,000 of our $2.6 million movie. We just have to raise the rest. I tried speaking to MasterCard about raising my limit to $2.6 million, and they seemed to be reluctant. I did promise I'd pay them back. Let's see, what's the monthly payment on $2.6 million? So no, perhaps Hollywood will come knocking on our door when we get it made, but we have to get it made first. They're not going to, at this point, reach out to us. We have to just go our own way and get the movie done and get a buzz going about the movie, maybe get it into some select theaters in specific cities in the United States and sort of get the ball rolling. And then, of course, Hollywood will stampede to our door, hopefully.
Exactly. You definitely hope so that, right, like that they'll definitely notice, because I definitely think there's a lot of value, absolutely, you know what I mean, in bringing more of these causes. But it doesn't, of course, surprise me that it might not necessarily come across that way to others, and that they also might see that value, at least immediately, just because we understand that this is an untapped territory for most. There are many like Marianne who are fighting that fight, and like yourself, daily, but unfortunately others might not necessarily be aware. So I love that
Yeah.
this is providing that opportunity to really say, like, yeah, something that may be new for us is actually something that we've been fighting all along, and it's a worthy fight, because as you
Yeah.
mentioned, yeah, you're even you even talked about it yourself. You've had your own personal experience, which I'm sure is what's driving your own passion to help in this project, and to be able to bring that awareness, which is so needed, to be honestly with that. And so what I'm curious too is, like, what are you hoping, so when the as the movie gets done, and I'm sure, because we're going to speak all positive vibes into it, that it is going to get fully funded, it's going to be great, it's going to get picked up, all that. But what are you hoping? Like, what kind of awareness are you hoping it will build? You know what I mean? What kind of audience are you hoping it will attract? Like, have you already set forth? I'm sure you have, but like those goals and all that.
As I mentioned, there are millions of mothers and fathers and children and grandparents who have been impacted by family court, but there are also millions who really have never had the unfortunate opportunity to get involved with family court. And it's those people that we want to reach out to. The victims already know that the family court system has to be changed. It's the people who have not been victimized who really need to get the ball rolling so we can bring about some change. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, interestingly enough, as I sometimes reach out to other producers in the United States, the family court system is kind of a, how do I describe it? It's kind of a no man's land, because there are so many lawyers and social workers and psychologists who make a good living off the family court system that is sometimes difficult to get people to sort of make that courageous leap and confront the family court system. I mentioned, you mentioned about Hollywood. Most agents are lawyers or have been lawyers. So when you start talking about family court corruption and the corruption in the legal system and the social worker system, and the adoption system, then people start to back away, or at least some people start to back away. So in some ways, it's kind of a dark subject. And I think that's part of the reason that we've been having difficulty attracting a name actress. Actually, we've having trouble getting our script past an agent who has to then give the script to their client. I think that accounts for some of the difficulty we're having. It's going to take a lot of people with a lot of courage in order to reform the family court system, simply because it's such a moneymaker. And so many people make a really good living off it. Unfortunately, they're making a really good living off people's misery.
That one I had to take my own breath on that one, because agreed, but it's just such an unfortunate reality, that you're sharing with us, is that, and we get that, we get that there's a lot, and 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 of course the ironic thing about that is that a lot of families are benefiting from that. There's some families that are benefiting from that in the fact that they're able to provide for their families, but meanwhile there are others that are crumbling because unfortunately the way it affects them. So I think it's just so interesting to know that that is the situation we find ourselves in. But that's why I just can't applaud this effort enough, and I just love that we're having this opportunity to talk about it and just share, just because that's how it is also, even when we're just trying to have the conversations, let alone a production. I love that you're having a movie, so like there's that potential to really get a larger audience. But even when we talk about these issues in general, even with our show, I mean, we're not getting like millions of views. We don't have to lie about that. I mean, we have we're talking about the difficult conversations. We're definitely talking about difficult topics, and we understand why. We understand that these aren't the topics that people flock to talk about and all of that, but they're worthy conversations. That's the thing. So, so I'm just so glad, exactly, when we have genuine, individuals that understand that and want to get behind it. So I just love that, you and Marianne were able to find one another. But I do agree. I definitely think that you're shedding light on something that is a bigger issue, way bigger, because that's just how a lot of individuals feel about it. And I'm curious about that. So, you talked a lot about those obstacles. Have you also faced that in other, in other areas of your career? Have you also faced similar obstacles with other things that you've tried to produce, being the kind of person you are? I'm just curious, like, what that's like for you.
Well, we have, my company has 4 projects in development, one of which we just obtained full funding, and we're going to shoot it in Africa, actually in Rwanda, with an all-African cast and an all-African crew. We hope to shoot it in the fall of this year, and it's called Nurse Christie Saves Christmas. It's about a fledgling nurse whose first shift is actually on the day before Christmas, and Santa is brought into her ward unconscious. So she has to organize Christmas. Otherwise, millions of kids all around the world will be disappointed. So we have that. That project sort of is a family comedy. So we didn't have any problems with that, other than initially finding an investor. It was interesting. A few months ago, I was talking to Marianne about one of our other projects, which is called The Reluctant Witch. And the theme is human trafficking. And Marianne pointed out to me that the foster care system is one of the major suppliers of child slavery. for not only, and so many of those kids end up in pornography. So the whole family court system has tentacles that reach all through our society. I was shocked. I hadn't realized that, but it's horrific. It's horrific. Our other project, we're hoping to. We've just partnered with a company in Ireland as a co-producer, and we're hoping to produce Buffalo Red, which is a story about a young Black Irishman, and they do have Black folks in Ireland. A young Black Irishman who actually flees Ireland and ends up on a Canadian bison ranch. So we're hoping to get a distributor interested in that. We have our producer, we have our director, we have our cinematographer, we have most of our cast in place. We just need to come up with a small amount, $9.6 million. So if you would like to write us a check, we'd be happy to give you a really large credit.
Right, I'm working on it. No, I was writing it as we speak, you know what I mean? And that's what I was curious about too. You're saying that, and it's funny to hear that, like, wow, like you said, even like 2.6 million, nothing for Netflix, nothing for them. But of course, you know, to the regular citizen, I'm thinking like, wow, that sounds like an astronomical amount to me, just as a regular person. But I mean, but I agree. I mean, it's that kind of industry, right? Where that, that's actually a small drop in the bucket compared to like what, does it. And of course, not surprising to hear that, yep, family films, very easy to pick up, very easy to distribute, and it's an easy sell. Like, okay, we're having this, there's laughs there, it's all of that. But that, of course, other ones that are more, that have that difficulty. But I agree. I think the powerful thing that you said, but which of course, shout out to Marianne, because it was actually she who told you about it. Those tentacles, I was like, that definitely sound like a whole chill down my spine, because it is something that I might have thought about, but to have really made that connection, I agree. I don't think I had made that connection. I definitely think that I'm always engaging in conversations where we talk about modern day slavery does exist. Unfortunately, we kind of act like it, disappeared, or for many, it's easier to say that it's disappeared and say that we're not currently dealing with slavery in, modern day society and all of that. So I know I've had that many, but I can even say that as someone who's worked for different, even sexual assault organizations, I don't think that we've always put enough of that emphasis that it does come from that. We do know that we often talk about it do come from vulnerable populations, absolutely, the displaced, those broken and all of that, but that direct connection to the foster care system, I just think not only, I don't think we talk about it enough, but it's also been highlighted enough. So I think, like, agreed. I think that was just something really incredible. And so I'm just glad that that's like forming the crux of what, this whole movie is about, you know what I mean? And all of that. So I definitely agree there. But also, because we are talking to you as someone who's a producer, I just want to take such great advantage of that. What is the process? Because we often don't get to speak, I often, we do get to speak to, others with their, their direct stories and all of that. But what is the process like for you as a producer? Like, walk us through, because I know there's people that have no idea what it's like behind the scenes, to bring all of this forward. So like, I think at least with Custody Denied, it's clear like what you want audience to hopefully get out of it and all of that. But what's it like for you? You know what I mean? To produce a film from start to finish, like what all does it, and how do you make sure that the integrity is maintained? Like, what all does that look like?
Well, people do ask me, what does a producer do? Actually, in Hollywood, there's really only thing you need to be a producer is $25 to print business cards. But in actual fact, when people ask me what I do, I really only do three things. I find the money, I watch the money, and I hire great people. So basically, that sort of encompasses the whole thing. With a feature film, it's a year-long, two-year-long process from beginning to end, if there is in fact an end, and usually there isn't. Because basically, once you have a project, a script, or even an idea, then you sort of have to work toward the point where you actually start filming it. And those steps along the way are generally development and pre-production. Development means that you're working on the script. You're working on drawing up a wish list of actors or actresses that you'd like to see in your movie. And you're fine tuning that script to the point where possibly 10 drafts, 20 drafts, you're showing it to your wife, you're showing it to your mother, you're showing it to everyone who you can possibly show it to get feedback to the point where it's presentable. And then you go into, once you have some money, or once you have some commitments, and it need not be a lot, $10, $20, $30,000, then you can send that script off to a professional script reader who will charge you anywhere up to $5,000 to go through your script and give you feedback. And then you can start approaching talent, and you can start approaching actors, and you can start looking for locations, and you can start having conversations with a lawyer who will start drafting contracts that I think ours charges $450 an hour. I wish I could make $450 an hour. But then again, I didn't invest all that time into law school either. So good for them. I can't begrudge them their $450 an hour because they invested a lot of time into that. So that's the development. And then you go into pre-production. Pre-production can last months because basically you're looking at locations, you're looking at fine-tuning the script, you're looking at having conversations with actors, directors, cinematographers who you want to bring onto your team. And once you have your team together and you have the rest of your financing, so you've raised the rest of your money. And this is where some producers get into trouble, because what they'll do is they'll find part of the money and then they'll start shooting. And then all of a sudden, halfway through their movie, they run out of money, which leaves a bad taste in terms of people who work in the industry. So you always want to have all your financing in place. You want to have the money in the bank. It can't be a verbal commitment. It has to be money in the bank, and you're good to go. And then you just start hiring people and you start writing checks. You put together your cast and crew and finalize their commitments. And then you, wherever you're going to shoot, you move whatever people and equipment that you need to that location, and you shoot. With Custody Denied, we're looking at a 21-day shoot, which isn't long. But after the 21-day shoot and you got the film completed, then you go into months and months of post-production. So you take that completed film to a lab. The director will sit with the editor, and they'll actually manipulate that film so that it reflects the director's vision. And basically at that point, it is the director's vision. As a writer, I write a script, but a script is only an outline. Everyone else has a piece of that. The director, the cinematographer, the actors will have their input. The set designer will have their input. Everyone will contribute to the making of that film and the look of that film. And then it goes off into post-production. And then the editor will sit in their darkened room with their $1 million worth of equipment and make it into something that's worth watching. And that's the easy part. And then you've got to get it out there. I know that with some distributors, with some producers, they'll actually burn their movie to a DVD and then get on a bus or get in their car and just go from theater to theater saying, look, I made this movie, will you show it for me? Generally, it's small theaters that they will do this in different cities. The problem with the major theaters is that, like Cineplex, I don't know if you have a Cineplex down there, but you have other theaters like that that are major chains. They are booked up 2 years in advance. So a small film like Custody Denied will never make it. They don't have room for it. They're booking 4 or 5 screens with Spider-Man. they have no room for your small film. So really, Custody Denied is going to build up a groundswell of interest only by hitting the smaller independent theaters. And that's how we plan to do it until the word gets out, and then the buzz reaches the point where perhaps a streamer like Netflix or Amazon will become interested in it. And then it'll be able to be sort of spread out to a wider audience. And that's what we want. We want everyone to see, because we want everyone to start that conversation, whether they've been victimized or not. We want everyone to know how corrupt and how harmful, how anti-family the family court system is.
Oh, and I can't agree more. That's why I just think, and that's also just so incredible. Like for someone who has no idea, all those steps that go into it. I understand they might be commonplace your way, but it was. I'm so glad you walked us through that process, because there are a lot of steps that go into it that we don't realize. But also, I love especially what you just highlighted right there, is that it does give this, like we mentioned, this incredible opportunity just to at least have the talk, just to have the conversation, just to at least, begin talking about it, whether or not we know a lot about it, whether we know little. There are a lot of people, like you said, that have either indirectly or directly been affected by the family court system. And it's just a great one that exists, but also might not realize what you just said right there, how anti-family the family court system is, which I'm sure I would hope would have not been the intent when we first made a family court system. It should have been family centered, just because that should be the aim, right? Is to keep families together. You would think, but unfortunately, a lot of families are faced with many hurdles. And also, it makes a lot of families want to give up. To be honest, I mean, you get in there and you're trying to, you're trying to do everything the right way. But unfortunately, it can frustrate a lot. Like that's unfortunately my passion behind a lot of our criminal justice processes and systems, is that because they aren't victim centered, they actually do exactly the opposite of what they're supposed to do, which is they actually discourage people to come forward, and that should not be the case. Exactly. So it's just, I love absolutely that is what you're doing, and that's the way that we plan to do it. And I think that I love the process. I definitely think, and the vision behind it, that even if it starts off, it is going to be the smaller film, and it's going to start off in these smaller independent theaters, but that it gives that opportunity for those two things to happen. Like you said, for it to get possibly picked up by those larger networks, but it's also, either way, it's still giving that opportunity for those smaller conversations that will hopefully lead to larger ones. So, as long as it's happening, like, right, and that opportunity is being provided. But I had never had a chance to learn what it takes, Paul, to produce, all these great films and all those things. And I do love seeing, though, when things go from a smaller scale to a larger one. I'm a fan of Issa Rae's. I don't know if you know, Insecure. You already know. So like, I felt like I knew her personally, because I saw when she went from like the YouTube awkward black girl stage. I used to watch that like perpetually. That's when I was living in Detroit. And then to see her now with these grandiose, like she has this HBO show. So it's like, it's just amazing to see that. And that's what I'm hoping can happen. And I just think, because like that, I just love that. To me, she's always stayed genuine. At least that's how I feel. I mean, I don't know her personally, I've never met her, but it just feels like exactly like she maintains that. And it's just so great that genuine other people have met her and been able to continue that as well. So it's just
and there are a lot of success stories out there. Oprah, Tyler Perry, they all started off with nothing, and now Tyler Perry has how many hundreds of acres studio, a very successful producer and filmmaker. There are a lot of success stories out there, but basically they started, and I know that you'll agree with this. No one does it on their own. You always have people who you help, and people who have helped you. That's why we're hoping that somewhere in your viewing audience, listening audience, someone will know someone who's a name actress, or you bump into Amy Adams at Starbucks and you say, Amy, do you know that James Russell has a great script for you? So we're hoping that word of mouth will connect us with an actress. We need to connect directly with an actress, because unfortunately, if I call up Amy Adams' agent, the first word is hello, and the second question is, are you fully funded? Well, we're not. So they'll never pass the script on to Amy Adams. They'll never pass it on to Bryce Dallas Howard. So we really need to find people who know these people personally, or know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows them personally, who can get, so we can get the script to them. And we know that once we get the script to them, they'll say, gosh, this is a great script. How come my agent didn't tell me about this? And we'll get the movie made. In this business, it's really difficult to get a movie made unless there's a name actor or actress attached to it. It's unfortunate because there are a lot of amazing, amazing actors and actresses out there who could really handle this role. But unfortunately, when I come to sell the movie to a distributor or a broadcaster, the first question they're going to ask me is Amy Adams in it? Is Julia Roberts in it? No. Who's in it? Marilyn Faulkner. Who? No, I don't want it. That's the way the system works. And it's understandable because those distributors have to sell it to different territories. So a distributor will sell it to Africa, will sell it to Germany, will sell it to Finland, will sell it to Mexico. And when they have to sell that project, the people they're selling it to will say, who's in the movie? So it's the Hollywood system. And it's been like that for decades. And it would be nice if it would changed. And, and occasionally a movie like Moonlight with relatively unknown actors will rise to the top. But those kind of movies are really few and far in between.
Wow. And I definitely don't think I did realize that, or I'm sure most of us have not, that is why. Because I heard you definitely mention that a lot. And it also makes me remember another guest that we had, Bailey Smith. We were talking about how, it's great to see Angelina Jolie, for example, and how, she's, using her voice. But the only also unfortunate thing is that it takes a voice like Angelina's, right? Like it's just right. So it's like, it's a great thing. And I actually do love Angelina for that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like, oh, I'm glad she like fights for these causes. But it's just unfortunate that a regular person speaking about that might not get as much, unfortunately, just, much publicity as she will, just because she has a larger platform. And it's just kind of how it goes. So, and I get that. I mean, so it definitely makes sense, but it's just incredible to hear that that's actually what drives it. So like, I don't think I would have ever, thought about that's actually what it, almost requires, honestly, if you want to be able to take it as far as you, would like to and all of that. But I definitely think that I agree. I'm just kind of hoping that the right, people will have that conversation together. Hopefully the right connections will be made and we can, because I definitely feel like if there's any, production that deserves to have that kind of exposure, it would definitely be this one. So I definitely just hope that, that can happen. And with that though, too, is there any like, prior to now, because I know this one I'm sure holds a very special place for you, but is there anything that you produced in the past that you're just like incredibly proud of because it took like so much to be able to do it? I mean, I'm sure there's many because like they probably all like hold, different places for you, but is there one that you like recall that you're like, wow, it took like so much effort, similar to like in this one, and I'm just like the one I'm probably like most proud of being able to, get behind and produce?
Yeah, my films thus far have been short films. As you mentioned, my first feature film, we started off was a horror film, Cut It Out, and we started shooting it. And about halfway through, COVID hit, and we had to shut it down. I remember the film I shot called The Painter, which we shot in Los Angeles with a crew of about 20 people, and it was really guerrilla style because what we had to do, we couldn't afford the permits to shoot on the street. So we had one person at one end of the street and another person at the other end of the street looking for cops. So we could shoot. And then when a cop passed by, we would all pack up and throw all the equipment into the car and then just hang around looking casual. And then when the cop drove past, we would get all the equipment out and continue shooting. We were really happy about that, the way it turned out. That's it was the kind of project that, you sort of have in your heart and it's close to your heart, like Custody Denied. When I was living in Los Angeles, I lived in an area that had a lot of graffiti. gang graffiti, taggers. So the neighborhood association volunteered me to go out every morning with a can of paint. And I would go out with my can of paint and my roller, and I would just walk down every street painting over the graffiti. And sort of that gave me the storyline about a painter who does that, who ends up being shot by the gang. But yeah, the painter, I love that movie, and I loved working with the cast and crew. And it was, exciting shooting on the streets of Los Angeles. But we're hoping that same sense of pride will come with our other projects, with Custody Denied and with Nurse Christie, because we're really looking forward to shooting in Africa. Because I've lived in Tanzania for a while, but I've never seen much more of Africa than that one city that I lived in. So we're looking forward to shooting in Africa. And Africa is a huge market. There's billions of people. And in many of those countries, the only movies they see are American movies on DVDs, on badly copied DVDs. So we're hoping to not only shoot Nurse Christie Saves Christmas, but also use the profits from that movie to begin building an infrastructure so we can start building a studio. I know that Nigeria has a big film business, but really outside of Nigeria, there's next to nothing in terms of a film business. Well, Nigeria and South Africa, there's next to nothing in terms of a film business. So we're looking excited. We're excited about the projects that we have in development.
Wow, as you should. But I agree. I definitely think Africa is incredible just to even be able to take in, let alone be able to produce something, that scale there. Right. Just to have that chance. I think anybody who has not had that chance, it's on my list as well. I'm just like, I just wanted to be able to at least see it with my own eyes, let alone have something produced here. So I agree. I definitely think it's just great. And that's exactly what I was thinking, is that it just seems like, you just have just this great, passionate and wonderful, but also like genuine spirit behind everything that you do. And it's definitely evident with Custody Denied for sure. But I just love too how you talked about even like the painter, for example, just how you drew inspiration for that, how you kept that throughout, and then how that was able to then, shine forth with it. But I definitely agree that Custody Denied, absolutely. I definitely think it's something that you just undeniably, at least for me, I just, I wish I was Hollywood, right? I could just, like you said, sign the check for you, but for me, at least, it's definitely undeniable, like why we need it, why we should have it, and, why more people should be talking about it. So I definitely think nonetheless, it's just great that it's at least in that way, and then we're at least moving in that direction for sure. But with that too, oh, go ahead.
Well, if one of your viewers happens to have an extra 2.6 and we don't, need Amy Adams, we could cast Melissa Santana in the lead role.
Well, I know I was thinking, I was like, oh, it would be nice, but I don't have the name. I don't carry the same weight as them. But I actually would be interested. I actually did used to act back in my day. So I was like, oh, okay. I can't help. Oh, man. But I agree. I'm like, hey, if the person's out there, let us know. Because then we can make some things happen.
Yeah.
But I do love it. I definitely agree. I'm just glad that like we're at least moving in that and doing that. And I was curious too. So like I heard about the actress, I heard about all that. Does the director, are they like one of the last people to get hired, one of the first? Like where does the director lie in all of that when you're
when you construct when you put together a project and specifically a budget, you have above the line and below the line. Below the line is pretty standard. It's your grips, your gaffers, your set designers. That's pretty standard. And with a union production, where you're using union cast, and I'm a union guy, so I try to, of course, use union people. You're looking sort of standard $1 million. It's really hard to make a movie for less than $1 million and use union crew. But above the line, you have your director, you have your cinematographer, and you have your actors. The director is one of the first people that you bring on board because it's going to be her or his vision that transforms that script into something that the viewers will see. The director will go through the script, and based on their understanding, they give directions to the cinematographer, and the cinematographer will give direction to the production manager, and the production manager will give direction to the set designer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, the director is one of the first people that you hire, but you can't hire them until you have the money, of course.
Right.
Because
Which makes sense. I know. See, everything just kind of flows one into the other. But I do love to hear that, because that's what I figured. I figured like that, at least to get that, vision to come across, to be able to give light to it, to really bring life to it in essence, that what you would need. And it's just amazing to hear that, these are all the steps behind it. We definitely have never had a chance to dissect this entire process and know what it looks like, the ins and outs. So, I've definitely learned a lot myself in a great way. But also I just think, as a result, that's why such a team is so, so vital. And I think it's also interesting because the parallel that I see too, though, is that with a lot of the individuals that we've had who have clearly overcome incredible things. I mean, literally, they have been through the trenches, are here to tell the story, and are just, incredible survivors of all these different types of things, including, family abuse, that does happen. And so I think with all of that, it's interesting how that's why community is just so important. It really, truly is. And I just think, a lot of us, take our times to, find that new community, whoever it may be, in our adult life or whatever it is. But this is, the value of it. And so, like, even with this too, like making sure you maintain the right type of energy, that you have the right people behind you. And yes, that you have that.
It's with custody denied, since Mary and I have started working on it, it's become a responsibility. Almost every day I get emails from mothers and fathers who have just horrific stories. I mean, suicide, bankruptcy, they lose everything. And it's, I feel, aside from my personal tragedy, I feel a responsibility to get those stories out there, and to get the conversation going. Because really, what do we have if we don't have family? So yeah, it's the movie's got to get made, and change has to happen.
Absolutely. I think that was the biggest part. Like, just exactly, what do you have if you don't have family? I mean, I think that's exactly what we all need to think about. And it's unfortunate whenever that gets, threatened, whenever that gets, like manipulated in any way, that unit, which is so vital for all of us. I think it's definitely like, it's what we literally all need. And we would hope that it could get preserved. But unfortunately, that's not always the case. There are a lot of things, outside things, that we cannot always control, that do happen. But that is absolutely why we need to shed light on what this is and be able to do what we can. But that is absolutely what I think. Like I said, I just respect and admire the most about this with custody denied, is that is what the awareness is about. You know what I mean? And just how important it is to have families, but also just that if there is systems and there is things that could be better, let's just shed some light on that and be able to have that healthy and hopefully fruitful conversation to follow about why these changes need to happen.
Yeah, and and in custody denied, in the script, Marianne assembles a group of 4 people who sit in her living room and man the phones, just fielding calls from mothers and fathers who are caught up in the system, and they're advising them, about the law and the ways, the tricks that lawyers and judges, the social workers use on mothers and fathers to, the advantage. So in that, in the movie, I'm hoping that, people will understand that by spreading the word, by becoming themselves Marianne's, and spreading the word and helping to counsel people who are just getting into that horrible system, perhaps that the end results will be better, because it's a very adversarial system, the whole family court system. It's really designed for battle. It's not designed for health.
It's just another, again, I'm hearing so many things that I'm just like, wow, these are all like, tweetable gems that we need to like be able to put out there. But I agree. I think that is the most incredible part about it, is that alone, the fact that you're saying it's set up for battle. Why should we have to do that? You would think that it would be the opposite. And then again, that's why we hope with so many of these systems that instead of being comforting, they're unfortunately actually traumatic. And so they actually re-traumatize a lot of people. That's one. But two, instead of, bringing that, connection, it causes more of a divide. And yes, you do leave it sometimes scarred, you know what I mean, in the worst situation. But like you said, you're preparing for a fight. That is what I think is the most unfortunate thing. And it's a fight for people who all they really want is to be able to, keep their families together and do what is right by their family. Some of them, I know there's also people, of course, in the family court system that might have, other intentions, just like people are. We get that. But it's just the fact that the system itself is already so difficult to even navigate, that there's a lot of parts of it that, are rigged already. Unfortunately, it's not in people's favor. I mean, I think it's those parts that, like you said, that's what we need to shed light on, is that it's already, to not already go into it with it, in an equitable way, for it to already be the odds stacked against you. That's what I think is absolutely the unfortunate tragedy here. And it's such an unnecessary tragedy. It should definitely, it would be great if it was not set up that way. We definitely think that, right. And to all those out there, who are like champions for your family, we see you. And that's exactly why I'm just so glad that you all are doing that. All kudos to you all for recognizing that and wanting to help. And so, not surprising to me at all that you are having all those calls coming in. And for anyone else too that might be seeing this now and is thinking, the same, like, wow, I just, I felt like that, but I didn't think anybody really cared. Well, we can let you know that that's not the case. And there are people who are fighting now a different fight to be able to, give you more of that awareness and do that. So I just, I can't be more, like humbled and great, and honored to hear that you all are definitely taking this on. And I just hope more, like you said, will also get on board and see like why it's such a worthy cause.
Yeah, well, and there are podcasts and webcasts and Zooms, hundreds of them out there who are like yours, who are trying to raise the awareness of not only family court, but also situations where there's parental alienation and abuse, both physical and mental, and human trafficking. Those voices are out there. Bailey, Marianne, yourself, and Eileen. There are people out there who are trying to raise the awareness, and that's what needs to be done.
Right. I definitely can't agree more. Oh, and so with that, of course, I could talk to you forever. I'm not gonna lie. There's so much I feel like that I can learn from you and just connect with you on, and just so much to also resonate with, and with all of that. But including any millionaires that might be listening, and also regular folks, if there's anybody out there. Is there any way that individuals can connect with you, that can learn more about you, all of those wonderful things before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, you can always reach out to me. The name of my company is Manx. M as in Mary, A, N as in Norman, K, S as in Sam, dash studios. Manx are the first letters of the first names of my children. So connect with me, feel free. I'm sure that if you connect with Eileen or Melissa, you probably have my email address. I'm always happy to hear from people. But please, the way we're going to get this onto the screen is if people who know people who know people who know people pass the word on, tell them that we, not asking for money, but connections. We need the connections. Even if someone knows somebody who works in one of the large agencies, CAA, William Morris, really it's the business is one of relationships. Me calling cold will get nowhere. But if someone who knows someone who knows someone can get us in the door, then we can get this movie made.
Absolutely. But also, let's not make sure that we do not shout out the fact that it was adorable that you've actually named this after your children. Like, you actually have the letters of it. I think that is amazing. I love that. And of course, another fellow mom out here. So I always love to hear that. It's just, wonderful. And just to have something like that that honors their legacy, you know what I mean, and passes it down. That is so wonderful. And of course, that person, family oriented, is the person that's making this, family oriented movie. So like, and all that. So I just think it's just wonderful. It's a incredible pursuit. But definitely, I'm just so glad, and I do hope more, people do connect. And like you said, it's definitely that value. And of course, we're mentioning money because it does take money to produce things. We need it. We can't get around that. But I definitely love that you said it's also the value in those relationships that are being formed, and that's also what's going to drive things, and more people that are on board and can, move this, it's going to drive it forward. So I just, thank you for shedding light on that. and all of that. So with that, is there anything else you want to tell our viewers before we wrap
No,
up?
I just want to thank you and Eileen for allowing me this time, and I really appreciate it. And I hope I didn't I didn't sound too many, I hope stammer too much, or
No, I knew
I'm
that's what you were gonna say. I was like, no, sir,
I'm not
not
really
at all. Right.
I'm
No.
not, producers tend to be behind the scenes, we're basically counting the money, making sure it goes to the right place. And, with your ear to, with the cell phone to your ear all the time.
Right.
So I'm hoping that what I've said is useful.
Oh, absolutely. And I just think you also just have a lot of wisdom to share that we don't always get the chance to tap into, honestly. So, like I said, I love the opportunity. I'm just glad that you were even willing to come on, and just but to be able to share all that. Because I definitely think it's knowledge that we don't always get a chance to have. So I appreciate you. I'm sure many viewers will. And if you also, resonated, like I said, make sure you also make that connection. Let's start it now, for sure. So
Great.
thank you again, James. And
Well,
thank you,
thank
everyone.
you.
Absolutely.